Thanks for joining us. As you saw from our intro, we're really targeting an entity called Robert Bosch today, which is one of the largest automobile suppliers in the world, with a headquarters in Germany. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters. If you'd like some better ideas on investing and trading, please join us on Patreon as well. Well, what happened is that we have a viewer who made a comment where he said, why is it that the large competitors to Tesla, particularly in the semi space, have been unable to kind of reel Tesla in? So as you know, Tesla is claiming 500 miles of range. They have customers experiencing that. The problem, though, is with that is that you have Daimler and other large OEMs, and particularly Daimler, they're engaged in something that I call vaporware trucking. And I will definitely make it very clear what that is as we move forward in this and other videos. So what happened is that I have an advisor to the show who's a PhD. He's a MITFID from MIT. And he and I will talk once a month or so for ideas on, understanding better what's going on with technology. So he raised a really interesting point. What he shared with me is that there's a process in certain industries where everyone goes and purchases certain parts from certain manufacturers. What then happens is that you have a large part of the industry using the same parts for whatever they're building. And what I didn't think of and learned about is that there's actually a process where a part of the fee that's paid is actually the R&D portion of what should be done. So in the automotive industry, for example, there was a battle at the early 1900s between GM, Ford, and others. GM kind of won out, and they won out because of a process change. The folks at Ford had decided vertical integration all the way was the best way to go. The problem, though, is when you mess with ICE engines, you're talking 2,000 parts, let's say. So the challenge you have is, can you maintain your R&D effort across all those different parts over time? And the answer was, it was deemed not possible to do that effectively and stay in business. So there was an improvement of success for the large OEMs because what they just did was say, we're assigning X part to an outside firm. Number one, we're going to buy large quantities over time for you. But part of the payment we're making is that you actually are going to be doing R&D for whatever it is as a part that you're making and selling to us. And it reduces our R&D costs, and that's built into the process. And as you do this for unique parts across all the manufacturers, now you have 5 or 10 companies all not only buying parts from one entity, but all their R&D is coming through that entity as well. So the answer to why it is that we're still seeing, after a 7-year lull, the Tesla Semi superior to all the other truck manufacturers is that they don't have individually the resources to devote to R&D and have decided to hand it over to companies like Bosch to handle their R&D for them, and they simply share. He also pointed out to me that there's something called EPRI, Electric Power Research Institute, which is based actually in Palo Alto, to some extent right next to Tesla. What they do is that there are a large number of power companies, US primarily, but I think it's actually a global organization. And what they do is there's a certain amount of money that's sent to them for research on how to run power grids better. So then what happens is that after that research makes progress, the progress that's developed is then sent back to all the members who are contributing cash to the forward progress of this process. So hence, a similar idea in the auto industry, particularly when it comes to electric vehicles, is really in order for them to be able to be competitive with Tesla, because what we're facing right now is that 500-mile range Tesla Semi is probably now up to about 600 miles in range based on overtime improvements. And so as a result, you have companies trying to compete at the same price point but offering less than half the range. And obviously that's a disaster. There's a concept that I'm presenting that I'm calling it vaporware EV trucks. So Daimler in particular responded aggressively, starting around when they were working with Tesla back in 2008-ish, in that era, up to about 2011. Daimler was sort of contracting out a lot of their EV efforts to Tesla and owned part of Tesla, and so they were helping the company succeed, but Tesla would not hand over all the innovations that they were making to non-Tesla vehicles, which is one of the reasons the two companies broke up. Daimler continued to do its own research over time in the EV space, and the traction and forward progress that they achieved was just okay, not great. So part of their strategy now with trucks is to simply say, well, what we'll do now is, for example, we'll sell a bunch of trucks in Southern California. Most of that bill is being paid for by the state of California to reduce pollution in the greater Los Angeles area, which is a big deal. But the other thing they've done is a similar thing when it comes to similar idea. So the idea that Daimler came up with to deal with the threat of Tesla, because in 2017, most entities were not prepared to deal with the threat that Tesla represented. And so they went into a mode of what I want to call vaporware, rapidly creating trucks, giving some away free, making sure that they tied up the facilities or structure of what the plugs would look like to try to blunt the potential impact of the Tesla Semi. And this process would give them time to allow Bosch or others to develop a solution that made them competitive with Tesla so they could retain their relationships with their customers. The problem was that the structure that they've done with Bosch doing the R&D has not really worked out. So there are wraparound services that might go with a battery pack. So as a result of the lack of a solution that's a wraparound service from the battery providers, we had the issue, for example, with the Ultium. So starting about 6 years ago, every about 15 months, there's been a new solution presented by different Tesla competitors on how they were going to compete with Tesla. The latest one to be shut down is something called the Ultium that was produced by GM, and it looked really cool, but as soon as I saw it, I thought it was a failure because it was a well sort of structured system, but it didn't address the fact that the batteries don't want to overheat, or they need to have a space where they can cool or heat readily. And the Ultium system wasn't really working to get the job done. So overall, what I was really hunting for here is to answer the question posed by one of our viewers, which is, why is it that the large truck manufacturers that are European-based do not simply produce large numbers of trucks, and then because those trucks have been adopted by customers, Tesla wouldn't be able to enter the marketplace because all those vehicles were sold? That is a great question. The problem, though, is that unlike cars, those trucks operate every day to deliver goods to various entities at various ranges. And when they deliver those entities, there is a concept called cost of goods sold that they're concentrated on, which means that if your solution does not offer enough freight weight, i.e. the batteries are too heavy, for example, and there's not enough freight that they can carry, the trucks are not efficient enough to make money. So yes, Daimler, MAN, Volvo, all these companies could easily produce hundreds of thousands of trucks rapidly and get them to their customers. The problem is if they arrive there and they don't have a certain level of efficiency in terms of how much freight they can move, then the customers won't buy them. And vehicles sitting around unsold doesn't do anybody any good, but that's why they need to have their R&D ramped up to help create a solution, truck and battery, that allows them to be Tesla competitive. And despite having 7 years to do so, it has not been achieved. So obviously the opposite has occurred. There are a large number of both consumers, etc., that are waiting. This is a side segue, but I'm sure you've heard about VW shutting down certain factories within Germany. You could almost say man for man how many vehicles are being produced by Tesla and the number of employees they employ versus what VW is shutting down is almost an exchange. There's still union jobs that are being offered there by Tesla. And so, yeah, we can see that allowing other entities to come in and manufacture within Germany definitely is going to cost German jobs. But you can also see why Tesla's tariffs aren't as high, because they are providing employment to a large number of people within Germany, and therefore that helps on a situation where a lot of jobs are being lost. So overall, I would say that what I believe is going to happen is that eventually Bosch and others will R&D their way to a solution that allows their trucking clients, in this case, let's say, to finally catch up and sort of blunt the impact of Tesla over time. The challenge is that we're not there yet. And when it comes to cars as well as trucks, the better solution is clearly Tesla still. And when you add in things like the charging facilities, etc., we're still in a situation where the catch-up that should have occurred already by Tesla competitors has not occurred. In fact, we have the opposite occurring. We now have a large number of consumers have decided that the costs of high-priced vehicles that are not ready with chargers, that don't have the range that consumers want, are inadequate, and they've chosen to do hybrids, for example, that way they have their plan B rolling with them. And unless Tesla starts entering that 400 to 500 range in terms of vehicles they put out, we might also see customers decide to abandon Tesla as well, because that extra range gives consumers a lot more flexibility and eliminates range anxiety. Obviously, they have their reasons why they have not done this, and Tesla is getting a little bit of leeway because they do have all those charging facilities to which their customers can go to. But it's still sort of a lurking issue in terms of how it's going to play out. At any rate, I hope this answers your question regarding why has there not been large numbers of trucks produced if, in fact, the electric trucks that have been presented in Europe by all the majors already exist. And the answer is they're somewhat vaporware trucks. They're inadequate in terms of the amount of freight they can carry relative to freight weight. And therefore, the semi retains the competitive advantage, and it therefore will enter the market and really make a dent in the number of vehicles sold and really affect the employment for a lot of these companies as they lose those sales because they do not have the R&D to actually deliver. Also wanted to note to you, Tesla's doing a whole range of energy products from home to large institutions like energy companies, etc., in terms of the solutions they're offering. So with all that vertical integration, the advantages Tesla is generating relative to competitors is actually pretty amazing, and therefore affects the catch-up process for these other firms. Once again, we want to thank you for joining us for the sort of trucking or main part of our show. Next, we move on to our health tips. Just a reminder, don't forget your 25 leg lifts a day. Also wanted to encourage you to walk 20 minutes a day, as well as consider no more than once a week fried foods. Also wanted to encourage you to try once or twice a week no meat for a day as a way to give your kidneys a break. Once again, I want to thank you for joining us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, auf Heathrow, hoda hafez, drashite, ni hao ma, konbanwa. And in Jamaica, we say, enough respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day, and bye for now.